Some people are calling it a Goldilocks economy. I might be one of those, but I'm curious about what Larry Goldberg thinks. And that's one of the reasons I had him on this morning. But I also want him to chime in on a couple of my recent statements that, some of you thought were kind of crazy, and maybe Larry does too. So, and Larry's never shy about letting me know his true feelings. Good morning, Larry. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Randy?
I couldn't be doing better. It was a great week.
Great week.
Yeah, great week. This is Randy Kirk, and hit like and hit, especially if you want to have Larry back and back and back, because that's how I get to know what's going on. I do want to tell everybody one thing. I am on number 99 with regard to this effort to get to 100 on Patreon. So everybody,
I'll be your 100th. How's that?
Everybody who signs up today will get the badge of number 100. How's that? All right. So, all right, Larry, let's talk about it here. Let's start with the economy. People are saying this is not everybody. Some people think we're still headed to a recession in the fourth quarter or the first quarter or the second quarter or the third quarter. I've seen really good economists, really good pundits who have said all four of those things. I'm saying economy's out. We're in a Goldilocks situation. What say you?
I think you're right. However, here's the warning. It's an early warning, but it's a serious warning. If this Federal Reserve Bank stops now, we're probably okay. I would have preferred them not to have done the raise that they did yesterday. Is it yesterday already?
Yeah, it was Wednesday.
Wednesday. I've lost track of time. And they're perfectly capable of doing another raise. And we haven't felt the full impact of the previous raise in interest rates. This raise is going to impact us a month or two down the road, or even a quarter down the road. So it's very important that they really declare a stop. Not only do they stop, but they declare a stop. And I would have preferred them to either have not raised yesterday or have declared a stop. So because, I still think the economy is fragile. Interest rates are high. You yourself spoke about, people becoming familiar with the $1,000 car repayment. That's not a good place to be. So, yeah, we're a Goldilocks economy, but, things can happen to Goldilocks, and I would be a little concerned about that.
So one of the things that came up the other day was this whole idea of inflation, though possibly coming back in. So the opposite side of this would be oil, in particular, gasoline, because they do infect the entire economy. I mean, oil and gas at some point or another touch everything we buy and every service that we get.
Yeah.
So oil is now at almost 80. It's been flirting around with 80. OPEC and Saudis and the Russians are all talking about continuing to, hold back in terms of producing. That could be another thing besides the Fed, which I don't think they'll increase. After the PCE yesterday, I think they're done. At least that's my, and assuming, of course, we need to have another PCE and 2 more CPIs between now and the Fed's next decision. But assuming those continue to show this 2.5 year over year, 2% month over month, or point less, there was a 2% annualized rate month over month. I think the Fed doesn't increase, but I am a little worried about oil and gasoline.
Yeah, well, the one thing happens to impact another, because oil and gasoline, as you say, tends to be foundational. It raises prices across a huge swath of the economy. That could be interpreted negatively by the Fed, who could say, well, we still need another increase, and thus increase. And the one begets the other. Oil does not necessarily reflect global economic activity.
Mm-hmm.
The price of oil does not necessarily reflect global economic activity, at least in the short term. And by the short term, I mean quarter by quarter. Oil, has some other drivers, political, military. They are.
The Saudis feel like they want a higher price. that alone can do it.
Well, the Saudis would be less militant about requiring a higher price. I think if this administration had been more accommodating to the Saudi, governance situation, if Biden hadn't been as dismissive of their government, I think that Saudis would have taken a different tack, would have been a lot more accommodating. I think that Saudis see an opportunity in the marketplace to both embarrass the Biden administration, position themselves a little bit better, impact the election campaign, and this is an acute moment in time because of the war in Ukraine. So it hasn't been played well. I mean, the government didn't play this well. The administration, I should say, didn't play this well, and I think we're feeling the brunt of it. Now, this is going to have consequences down the road. I think this will definitely, rebound, but it's going to take time to rebound, and the damage could be quite serious. But I would hope that the Federal Reserve would look past, this bump in the road. But, it's a very, very, I mean, I don't understand why we keep looking back on these traditional indicators when we have really live indicators that are so much better. But it is what it is. I mean, they're not going to change.
Right. So the other thing, this is just one data point, and I'm always concerned about just one data point, but I'd love to have people comment on this in the comments. One of my clients yesterday, who's in the promotional products industry, said that he is having the most difficulty he's had in years collecting debt, collecting receivables, accounts receivable. Now, I've talked about the potential damage of M2 dropping like it has been dropping, and of course, interest rates going up, and then the regional banks find it harder to lend. So he says he's got people that are ghosting. He says it's been years since he's been ghosted by clients who are 3 and 4 months past due on the receivable. So I'd love to have folks comment in the comments. If you're in business or you have something to do with accounts receivable or your company and you happen to know the situation, would you let me know in the comments? Are you having more difficulty? This will give us a little poll. That'd be kind of interesting, fun thing to do. Larry, what do you think about? I know you've had plenty of experience with trying to collect accounts receivable. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's some years since I've been involved in collecting accounts receivable, I'll tell you that. I'm thinking back 20 or 30 years, but I do know that, for small business, this is a very, very critical, lifeline, very critical lifeline. And, when times get tough, that's where it hurts. And I'm not surprised to hear this. It's painful to hear because, those memories leave one pretty raw, I can tell you.
Yes, of course, and then that flows through. So if I'm a retailer if I'm a wholesaler and I can't collect my accounts receivable from the retailers, then I can't pay my manufacturers or my exporters. Then they can't pay their people. It just goes right down through the system. And the worst recession that I think we were ever in was one where M2 dried up completely. What people talk about the 2008 recession, that one was a pretty fast, recession compared to.
Came and went.
Yeah. But the M2 thing, you don't recover quickly from that, and lots of folks go south.
Yeah, the 1973, I think it was, period was very, very, very difficult. That's when I was, in small business, and it was really, really, really tough.
I was
Really tough.
I was a wholesaler then. I was literally going out to the retailers who owed me money and taking anything I could take. It didn't have to be money. It could be bicycles, it could be helmets, whatever they had, I was taking it in lieu of cash. So yeah, it was a very, very tough time. So Larry, if we're in a Goldilocks economy, PCE just came in about as good as you could have ever hoped it to come in. All the evidence is that people are working, they're working good hours, they're getting good pay is going up a little bit. If all those things are true, are we going to start in what I would call the second leg of the bull market? And how do we identify the second leg? How do we know when the first leg is over? And
look at M2. Look at M2.
Okay.
M2 is on its way up.
Okay.
This is after some time. That is a very, very good indicator. So, I mean, we can't yet, it would be difficult to determine just how much it's going to go up and to what degree the velocity is going to continue to rise, but we're seeing very good indicators. So we're seeing low inflation and rising growth in the money supply and in the velocity of money. So between 2008, after that crisis, all the way to 2020, we didn't see a rise in the velocity of money. We saw a huge rise in the money supply, but velocity remained at almost zero. Now we're seeing, an increase in both, a measurable increase in both. If that continues, I think that will bode extremely well. If you look at the market, market's done a really good job of reflecting money supply times velocity, M2 multiplied by V, in terms of how it's risen. So that's a really good indicator that we're in the first leg of a bull market. Now, we've got to see, good profits. We've got to see, rising returns on equity, and all the other things that feed that market. But if the Fed does not, allow interest rates, lighten up, this will choke it. It will choke it because it's going to be very difficult for, velocity to rise in those circumstances.
Larry, what would you think it's going to take to see some rotation in this market? I'm thinking that some evidence of the second leg of the bull would be some rotation out of the techs and into some of the more industrials, but also some like the food stocks and the commodities. When do you think we'll see some rotation? Or what would you look for as evidence that rotation is taking place?
Yeah, I think this earnings season has been okay, not great. I think we're going to have to, we're a quarter away from seeing, better, if not great. And so I can't see this rotation really taking place for another quarter. That's just my instinct.
Yeah.
What do I know? I mean,
well, I was thinking that part of it might be a different kind of rotation, maybe a rotation out of cash and cash equivalents, money markets, into equities. That rotation might go more in because those individuals would be more conservative. They might be more inclined to go after the stocks who pay dividends, who've been around a lot longer.
Yeah, but look at the 10-year rate. The 10-year rate's going up. So we're going to see money market rates going up. I mean, so far they haven't ameliorated down. You can earn money. You can earn 5% now quite easily on, government bond funds, which means that, once you're at that level, it's really going to take quite a lot to move you out of that. I am more liquid now than I can recall since 2007.
Wow.
Really. Yeah, and in terms of my liquidity ratio, you know, always invested a relatively small amount in equity. There are other reasons that I'm in this level of liquidity, but I just, for myself, I'm not moving into the market yet in a very you know, committed fashion. And I think it's going to take a little bit longer for that sentiment to change, particularly when right now it's okay to leave your money in money market funds and, you know, and
Those
fairly
levels.
good at those levels. I don't see the hunger. I don't see the fear of missing out yet. I just don't see it, the FOMO in the marketplace. Now, if we get an indication that times are changing, you know, this could be, you know, there could be a move, because there's a huge amount of money. There's no doubt about it. There's a huge amount of money. And
so at the other end of the market, I noticed on Friday in the recovery from Thursday, I noticed that the Cathie Wood stocks did better even than Tesla. So Mark, I happened to buy a little bit more ARKK on Friday. I didn't quite catch all of the run, but I got some of it. So that was up over 5%. I think the ARKK was up over 5%. A couple of the other of the ones that she buys that I follow were up even more than that. So what about that group? Would you expect that group to be ahead of the dividend paying stocks? Would they start to move earlier?
I do.
Okay,
they will.
Okay,
they always do earlier. I you know, what you call a rotation, it didn't really happen in the last bull market ever, you know, and so it's not a given that it has to happen. We didn't see, ever since the crash in 2008, we did not see, you know, those stocks really perform extremely well.
Yeah, well, some, I mean, the Costco's and those guys, but I think you're thinking more of the more traditional dividend payers, the autos and the other food companies and whatnot did not.
Yeah, well, look at the Dun and Bradstreet. You know, I mean, those 30 stocks were, you know, they were the old meat and potatoes. Well, they've gone terribly stale. That meat and potatoes gone off, you know, and we've seen some rotation into that right recently, but I think it's going to take a lot more. We want to see some really solid performances. We want to see some, you know, really good performances. I mean, obviously, far too much money went into the high flyers. Far too much money went into the venture funds and into private equity. Some of that money has really suffered now. A lot of those investments have suffered quite badly. But I don't see the hunger. Well, who knows? I mean, the venture funds are hurting. Private equity, there's some really bright spots in private equity and some not so bright spots. It's a confused market.
I think one thing you can say for sure, there's no companies lining up to do IPOs yet. So that might be another indicator, is when we see the beginning of announcements that people are doing IPOs, that could be another thing that would give us some indication that we're hitting the second leg of this bull.
Chamath Palihapitiya predicted that SpaceX, or Starlink actually,
yes,
would be a precipitating event. A Starlink IPO would be a precipitating event towards the end of this year. It could happen. You know, Elon is so biased against public companies. I mean, he took Tesla public pretty much because he had to. You can't build an auto company without very significant public funds.
And he'd already done all his money.
Yeah. And so, I can't see him rushing into the public markets very happily. I mean, he can raise extraordinary amounts of private money, He raised that money for Twitter when everybody knew he had overpaid. I mean, the market had fallen. He bid on that company at the very peak of the market, And by the time he was forced to actually, pay up, the market was down 50%.
Yeah.
So how could he get private money to fund him, or fund a very significant proportion of it, in such circumstances?
Because he is who he is. Yeah, pick up the phone, Elon. Call me. I will send.
So why would he take Starlink, which is obviously, a incredible business? Yes. I mean, an incredible business. It broke even last quarter. And
if anybody wants to know the details of how good it is, get the Elon Musk mission. And the Elon Musk mission was early on this information, and the information has just gotten better. It's even better than what we talked about in the Elon Musk mission. So there's a good way for you to jump into the Elon Musk mission. Okay, Larry, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but your point is very well made. I mean, those of us who saw this coming understood it. We would have paid a pretty big premium for stock then. I bought SpaceX stock, a limited amount, because I don't expose myself a lot to private equity or private investments, but I just don't see him rushing to public markets because he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Now, Mars, if Mars is really going to require, $100 billion, and if Mars is really what he wants to do, that may be something he'll have to go to the public markets for. But right now, he doesn't seem to have a problem funding SpaceX's business.
Yeah, really.
But they are putting a lot of money into Starlink. They said it broke even last quarter. It seems that it's going to have to do a lot better than break even for the investment that they're making. I mean, they're putting a lot of money into it, and Starship must be costing, billions of dollars of investment. So, if Chamath is correct, and Chamath has much better information than I do. So if Chamath is correct, then a Starlink IPO could well be a very big precipitating event.
And it would just be crazy. I mean, the number of people that are just absolutely sitting on the sideline waiting for that day. So Larry, let's switch to Tesla for a minute. I made the claim. I did not get everybody going, yeah, Randy, you're 100% right, but I'm curious to see what you think. I say that with all the great news from Tesla last week, with all the great news from the economy last week, with all the great news on Friday from the PCE, that the most important news of the week was Google saying that they can now train a robot. They're not doing it because they're not going to get in the robot business, they say, but saying they can train a robot with vision only and using YouTube videos only, no actual, real life training. They can do it 100% with video. I thought that was the important news of the week because it says that Tesla is 100% on the right. And not that I didn't already believe this, but I think it should be telling the rest of the world and giving us confirmation that Tesla's been right, especially the last year or so, with this whole 3D video approach with Dojo, the $1 billion they're going to put into Dojo to allow them to do this kind of training. Google just said, "You're right, Tesla, you're on the right path." What do you think?
Well, I didn't put as much store in what Google said as you did, but I can understand why you think it's a precipitating, piece of information, because it confirms that a visual foundation model, or a foundation model of the world through 3D or through a video is possible. It's good enough for me it was good enough for me to see some of those lectures at that conference a few weeks ago, where they showed actually a car responding to prompts and being able to create a visual image of it finding its way along a street, based upon verbal prompts and or whatever those prompts happen to have been. So the notion of a foundation model that is a image of the world, a visual image of the world, as opposed to a language model that is a foundation model, it's a concept that that I think Tesla was able to demonstrate and is able to speak to. So it's really good that Google is also working on the same thing. I think that everybody translates everything that Tesla shows as coming as being present today. And I try and warn people it's not going to happen like in the next cycle. Now, what did surprise me was to hear Elon saying that he's driving version 12, which has been thought to incorporate this foundation model and to be based upon the foundation model instead of, part heuristic programming, part visual models, and some of the older models, so some of the older neural networks. I was surprised to hear that, because I thought that the timescales would take much longer. It looked to me from the papers that were presented, or at least the PowerPoints of the papers that were presented, that it was still very nascent and early on. For him to be driving version 12 means that there's been a very significant release of what they were talking about, whether it's completely end-to-end, or this foundation model of the world, or whether it is still partly other neural nets and some code, I don't know. But if it is all foundation one model, and some of these what they call hats, or some of these components on top of them, that's awfully quick. Then they must have had some of this in development much longer. So I'm a little skeptical of the timescales.
So on the other hand, we had ChatGPT come out last November. We're not even a full year into GPT world, and there are, I don't know, thousands of apps now.
But from the first paper on language models, large language models, until the advent of ChatGPT 3, there is a very significant time lapse, several years actually. So from the theoretical to the actual typically takes some time. I mean, we saw in the paper that was presented, we saw evidence of its ability, and it seemed to be fairly far along. But But to see that and then translate it to an end-to-end control of the car just seems such a huge leap. You know, if they've actually done it, my goodness. The other thing I'll say is, from the time they do a first build to the time that that build is released is, you know, we in the Tesla community start spinning these, you know, ideas based upon timescales in our head. It's like when they first presented the Dojo computer, or first showed the ideas and talked about the ideas, everybody talked about as if it was there already existing. And it's several years between the time that they were actually able to use it, you know, for gainful training, which is just now, which is 3 years in. It could, you know, that gives you an idea of how much we imagine versus the reality. So, you know, first cut, first release, first test to reality. Your guess is as good as mine, but mine will be longer than yours.
That's probably true. So several months ago, it seems like, I guess it was longer, maybe a year ago, there was a tremendous amount of anger and upset and unhappiness and fighting within the Tesla community on Twitter and elsewhere about the whole business of Elon becoming political or becoming differently political, putting himself closer to the fulcrum on the teeter-totter in terms of whether he was right or left in the world of politics. And there was a lot of complaining that, gee, this was going to hurt business, and that was part of the reason for the stock going down. At the time, I suggested that while I would agree that you can definitely impact people's decisions by your politics if you're a business owner, and I've said that in my books, in particular the books I've written about the bicycle industry, that, you know, don't tick off your customers unnecessarily. That on the other side of the coin, Elon had been relying pretty much on the left-wing customer for the entire time that the company had been built. And the right-wing customer was kind of like, we don't like this because it seems like too greeny. It seems like the government is all about it and pushing us and forcing us. And those are things that conservatives don't like. They don't like to be forced into things. They like to let the market work it out. So as Elon moved a little bit right, one could say that, I don't think he did it strategically, but one could say that it might be good strategically, because now you might bring some of those folks into the Tesla tent. Well, I'm sorry, this is going to be a long intro on this question, Larry, but last week, a big report came out, I think from Bloomberg, where they talked to Model 3 customers, which would, again, potentially be slightly left-leaning. They're 5-year customers who've had the car for 5 years. And those customers said that they were slightly less likely to buy another Tesla because of Elon's politics. They didn't do a similar test to find out whether I was right or wrong of people who haven't bought their Tesla yet, who are right-wing, to find out if they're now more likely to buy. But we did see at the same time another report coming out saying that the internet interest for the Cybertruck now is more in the flyover states than it is on the coast. Okay, now I've set the whole thing up. You watched, I think, the entire conversation on Spaces yesterday with Vivek, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name yet. I need to work on that.
Ramaswamy.
Vivek Ramaswamy. He might be the next president. I guess I have to learn how to pronounce his name. Yeah. So I'm curious, how did that talk? I watched about a third of it or something. How do you think that conversation went? Do you think it was positive, negative, in terms of Elon's reputation? Give us a flavor.
Yeah, I think that Elon has not moved his politics very much at all. I think the politics, I think what's happened is that everybody said, you know, people have moved left. The people on the left have moved much further left. I think the people on the right have also moved to the right. I think people have moved further apart. And there's no doubt in my mind at all that Elon, speaking as openly as he does about politics, ticks off people on the left quite a bit. You only have to look at some of the folks in the community. They really don't like it when he talks, when he opines on politics. And so I don't say he should or shouldn't, because I think that everybody should be entitled to speak as much as they wish. In fact, I far prefer it to the buttoned-up to the buttoned-up attitude of most CEOs, who then, immediately resign when they say something that one particular group doesn't particularly like what they said. I think that's just, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I think we're moving away from that. I think that's kind of, I think that whole thing has burnt itself out. I hope, anyway. So I think right now we've seen two candidates for president on Spaces so far, but one from the Democrat Party and one from the Republican Party, as best I can remember. So, we had Kennedy and then we had Ramaswamy. I like some of the things that each of them says. I don't like some of the things that each of them says. So I'm kind of neutral in this, but I really appreciate them speaking openly and reacting openly to the buttoned up, very canned kind of political statements that are made by, the standard candidates. I wish the standard candidates would come and speak to us the same way. That would be ideal. The fact that they don't means that only fringe candidates, and these guys are fringe candidates, they have very, very low, approval in the polls. But I wish, so we're really only being exposed to those guys who are not going to end up in the position of nominated by a party, by a major party for the presidency. So it would be important, I think, if Joe Biden would come on, or, if one of Trump, I am not a Trump supporter, as I may have mentioned, and I don't particularly like the person. I think his personality does not recommend him to, is not suitable for the presidency. I think it's not good, and it tends to drive the other party to extremes, and they have been extreme in some of the reactions to him. Although, some of the things he does are definitely warrants investigation. So it's just ugly. I wish people would come and speak openly, talk about their view of the country and their views, and come on to places like Spaces and talk the way these guys did. So I really appreciate them doing it. I wish it were more general in our politics. Now, to your question, does it damage Elon? Does it do good for Elon? Does it damage Tesla, which is, I think, the bottom? I finally got to your question. Yeah, I think it does impact sales to some degree. It may be offset a little bit by the other degree, but I think I mentioned to you some weeks ago my surprise that some of the people who come to ask me for a referral code, who I know to be, on the other side of many of the questions that Elon's positioned himself on, and some of the folks have been upset with him, but they were, driven to buy the Tesla because of what Tesla represents, what Tesla does, what the car is, and the value that you get with the car. And so I think it has an impact on sales. I think it's relatively small, and it is somewhat offset by the fact that there's a wider audience now that listens to him. But let me tell you that at the bottom, this idea of the Cybertruck being a fringe product or a marginal product, this is going to be one of the most important product launches in automotive history. It is going to change how we see vehicles and trucks. It's going to be a seminal moment in automotive history, just as the Model S was.
Yeah,
that's my feeling.
Yeah, I'm already, as a marketing guy, I'm already claiming that it will be the most photographed product in history. It will possibly cross the threshold of Marilyn Monroe, although my wife says that Jackie O was actually more photographed than Marilyn Monroe. But I think the Cybertruck is going to be passing both of those. So just the impact of the look of the product, and now what they're doing, of course, with my image here. Everybody, please understand, this is just an image. There's no, you can't buy it. Although I think somebody should probably produce it and sell it. I think they would sell lots and lots of them. Elon, there's another possibility for you. Now that all these wraps that they're doing, phenomenal promotion. I mean, Elon is so many things. That's why I wrote the book, The Elon Musk Method. He does so many things well, but promoting is one of the ones he's just crazy on. And to put these wraps on these vehicles and put them out there, holy mackerel, is just genius.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's Elon who thought of the idea, although it's classic Elon, doesn't it? It
Yes.
Sounds like classic Elon. Yeah, he is. I think he is. People criticize him for not advertising and saying the pricing of Tesla is, bad because they could have done it with advertising. I think the pricing move was, it was definitely, I think the catalyst for the pricing movement was dropping demand. But I think that the strategy of, driving the price down and, positioning the car as an everyday, as a competitive car to the everyday driver, I think sets us up for a new leg up in the sales projection, in the sales evolution. I just, it's a great pity that Tesla was unable to develop the 25K car, whatever it's going to be called, earlier. And I really do believe that the whole evolution and development was impacted by the pandemic. But if I were to criticize Tesla at all, it is just that they have not evolved enough product fast enough. But I can understand they've got their hands full trying to, build these factories, trying to, get the production up on these factories, trying to get these batteries up and running. I mean, they've done an incredible job.
Yeah,
so.
and at the end of the day, the battery constraint has been the biggest thing. It's obviously held up the Cybertruck. It's big time held up the semi-truck. I think it probably held up the Gen 3 vehicles. So the batteries, you got to have enough batteries.
Yeah.
Nothing happens until the battery is made. There's a new one. How about that one? Nothing happens until the battery is made. Could that be a T-shirt, Larry? Anyway, so that'd be my first merch would be nothing happens until the anyway. So, but speaking of batteries, I think it's crazy. I know you're not going to argue with me on this one, but give it your best shot. I think it is absolutely nuts that the street still doesn't understand that there's an entire additional Tesla in the energy storage. And not 5 years from now, maybe 2.5 years.
Now,
2.5 years.
now,
2.5 years from now, the energy storage business will be at 100 billion. Maybe it's 3 years from now, it'll be at 100 billion. It'll be at 25 to 30% margins. It will be recession proof. It will be, nobody's going to go bankrupt. These are utilities that are going to be paying the bills.
I wrote a paper saying this. Professor Damodaran, who does pricing, who does valuation, company valuations, valued Tesla, did a valuation of Tesla, and only when the stock really was getting down to its bottom did it ever reach his valuation, because it was so low. And he's very, very, very astute, and he does a really good job. And he even showed that the pricing of the vehicles are going to have to come down. So he knew what he was talking about, but he refused to do any valuation on the energy business. He said it was going to be a small business. This was 2 years ago. And I wrote a whole paper showing, and, so we didn't have, this paper that that Tesla wrote on the future, and what do they call it?
Master Plan 3. Master Plan 3.
Yeah, Master Plan 3 hadn't been out yet, but it was clear to me, and I had projected actually more batteries required than Master Plan 3 projected, because they project the use of green hydrogen for very large scale products, but actually I used all batteries, and there are other folks who've done this as well, and they've come up with roughly my numbers. Anyway, it doesn't matter, because what I showed is that the energy business was going to actually rival the vehicle business. I wrote this almost a year ago now, and I'll pull it out, but it's clear to me that the energy business is growing very rapidly, and it's growing more rapidly than is evident by the numbers yet.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the numbers yet because of how long these things take in the pipeline to actually get paid.
Also the bookkeeping, in terms of when you get paid for it, when you can take credit for it on your financials. So I've estimated my analysis based on Elon's statement, not based on anything else, is that eventually the energy storage business will be 400 billion in sales, and will be therefore about 100 billion or so in profits. And that would be an Apple. So that would give a valuation of $1 trillion or $3 trillion.
Well, we have
in the energy storage side.
Yeah, we're going to see some enormous competition from battery manufacturers in China, and it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. But people are very critical about the battery production at Tesla right now, and people don't remember the struggle to actually produce batteries profitably that Panasonic had at Giga factory in Nevada. It took years before that really ramped and was successful. And it's taking actually a little bit less time now at the rate at which the production is rising. But it's critical for that to succeed, because if they're able to succeed with that battery plant, as I believe they are, the results are going to be very impactful. Now, I understand that the chemistry they're using right now is not ideal for battery storage, but the chemistry, I don't believe chemistry is a problem. I think they can change chemistry over time.
Yes.
But, the importance is being able to build these compact battery factories gives them enormous capacity for expansion. So it's going to be very interesting as it plays out, but clearly, the energy business is going to be very critical to this whole story.
Yeah, so I heard a comment from a bull the other day on one of the other YouTube channels, that I think that they would probably like to take back if they realize what they said. They were saying, well, you can't really get to Tesla's current valuation without robotaxi. And I'm thinking to myself, I can easily make the case that the Tesla is worth every penny of what it is today with just the projected ramp of the Sexy and adding in the Cybertruck. You don't even need the Gen 3 cars. You don't even need you don't need energy. When you start adding in the Gen 3 cars and the energy, you can make an easy case for 2 times the valuation. And then if you go back to that other thing I did a couple of weeks ago, you can make a case that if it was worth $410 2 years ago in November, it's worth $800 right now if the market was more risk on and there was more of the cash coming into the marketplace. So no, I can make a case for a lot more than the current valuation.
I wish you guys wouldn't make those cases.
You're trying to buy more, right?
I think that we should just be accumulating and speaking less and accumulating more. That's well, I mean, it's all very well to keep the secret amongst ourselves, but we shouldn't be putting it on YouTube.
I did buy some more LEAPS at $255, Larry.
I'm really waiting for the 2026 LEAPS. I think they're due in September, right? Before the end of September.
I think I bought June 25. I think so. Anyway, that's not investment advice. Do your own homework. Larry, it's been great. Love the show today. I hope everybody, I hope you loved it as well. Be sure to hit like to remind me to ask Larry back over and over again. Please hit subscribe and notify. And then, of course, buy the books. And we're looking for number 100 today on Patreon. Larry says he's going to be one of the.
I'm going to sign up. If you want to be number 100, you're going to have to get there before me.
All right, Larry. So everybody that signs up today gets the designation number 100. And I'm going to have some new ideas next month with regard to Patreon. I think you're going to like them. Larry, thanks so much for being on. And
thanks, Randy.
All of you out there, it's been great talking to you.